wonderful. We went from 15 to 55 in just 2 seconds. Welcome back, everyone. I hope that you enjoyed the breakout sessions. I enjoyed the 3 that I was able to attend, and just progressively impressed with our students, and want to thank them for all the hard work and coming after the completion of courses to just show what they've done. So thank you so much. It's my pleasure to introduce my colleague and sort of co-collaborator for the EnMed integration, and that is Dr. Nicholas Sears. He's an assistant director of the academic program on the engineering side, and he's going to talk about the project selection criteria and the awards. Dr. Sears, you're on.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I'll share my screen. Can everybody see it? All right. Well, yes, thank you so much. I'm excited to talk a little bit more about what the students have been going through this semester. I saw a chat, I can't see it now. And how we've brought together the engineering and medical sides and the different sessions involved. It's been a great year now, getting to know this class. They've come up with some great ideas. They had lots of great ideas last semester, and then their development of them this semester has been really exciting and inspiring. So a little bit of background, I think Dr. Green mentioned this, but I wanted to kind of set it up in order so you could see what the students have gone through. In the first semester, they had these clinical reasoning sessions where it was a very unique session. They were able to work with a clinician directly and really understand the art and the finesse it takes to be really good at taking a history, doing a physical examination, and understanding the patient. As a result of those sessions, the students were tasked with identifying needs inspired by those interactions, and they were supposed to ask questions during those sessions, go out and ask other experts in order to fuel these innovation sessions. Then they use the biodesign process to evaluate that. So different tools that we taught them over the summer, but also diving deeper throughout the first semester to help evaluate those needs and do a first pass. Now, during the second semester, we didn't have quite the same setup. We took those ideas, we continued to teach about the biodesign process with a different emphasis, right? We talked about different areas, and I'll go into a little bit more detail in a moment. But we applied that analysis to the 168 innovative solutions and ideas that they identified in the first semester that ranged all the different possible areas: neurological, ear, nose, and throat, pulmonology, lots of cardiovascular and gastrointestinal potential needs, as well as musculoskeletal. So they took all the needs from the first semester and evaluated them in a different way. Now, at the same time, we continued this engineering coursework. Like I said, they learned about new parts of the biodesign process, but they also learned about different technologies related to their practice of medicine and relevant medical coursework. So this meant that they were talking about endovascular surgical devices that they may not have been exposed to yet, neuroengineering, immunotherapies, and specifically, one good example is the respiratory devices and therapeutics that they actually had some hands-on exercises building. So they've seen, you know, how to check for adequate breathing, different signs of that. They've had their respiratory block, and they've also built the actual devices that assess respiratory function. So this is one of the ways that we're trying to bring this all together. Now, in terms of actually assessing, there we go, the developments from their first semester, we first had them form teams because we had just so many ideas to draw from. We wanted to try and condense it a little bit. We formed teams so they had different specialties involved. They could help brainstorm, and they were to come up with one primary solution or primary need to try and come up with solutions for. They then applied these new biodesign evaluations all semester to help vet these ideas and minimize risk in commercializing these opportunities. So they performed extensive ideation and then eventually concept screening and assessed them on the basis of regulatory potential, their potential business model, and reimbursement as well. And I believe, yeah, I was covering it up, but IP is a very important process, a very, very important aspect of this as well. They did lots of IP searches and an evaluation of potential in that regard. So we also made some improvements from this first session to the second. The students expressed that they found the sessions very enjoyable. I think that what they appreciated was the ability to the opportunity to start identifying needs and thinking about those potential innovations. That's the whole point of this program, right? Get your creativity going. But they really appreciated being in pairs and groups this semester and being able to kind of work at it as a team, right? Have some backup for presentations, but also for collaboration and brainstorming. So we hope that that's been a very fruitful change, and we're liking how it's evolving. Now, in terms of the actual innovation proposals, the students did final proposals at the end of the semester about a month ago. These were evaluated by the EnMed faculty. We looked at their quality in terms of the biodesign evaluations, the merit and novelty in terms of the innovation potential, and those top 3 teams will be presenting today. So I won't go into much detail, but third place was Sandra Z, Tarek Dwamne, and Rachel Stating. We'll be talking about the head positioning during radiation, their top need that they identified. And then second place was Madeline Frankie, Brianna Cathy, Nia Chowdhury, and Johnny McMurray, talking about their liver enhancer. And then first place is Tanner Walker, Mitchell Sue, Caleb Hausler, and Vasiliki or Lily Anamikos, talking about their reducing noncompliance and misuse of medications. Hopefully some of you were able to see a little bit of their talks during the poster session, but today they'll be giving a little bit different presentation, focusing on this broader audience and the really interesting novelty of their idea and motivating that. Now, in terms of what they'll be receiving, they're not just first, second, and third place. First place will actually receive $40 for each team member, and I think this is really cool. I hope you guys do too. The naming rights to one of the bays in the Makerspace's flagship 3D printer, the Stratasys Cloud 9. There's a picture there. Sorry, it's a little blurry. You can see the emblem at the top. We're going to have some kind of plaque that'll go there. That's the one name you're not allowed to use, but pending our approval, you get to name that bay, and it's kind of a bragging rights. We're hoping that you enjoy this a little bit extra above the monetary award, and that over the next few years, because it will be persistent until it cycles through, so for 3 years, everyone who prints on that machine will be printing potentially out of your bay, and you have the bragging rights to it. Now, second place will receive $30 for each team member, and third place $20 for each team member. But all of these presentations, I think you'll find very interesting, engaging, innovative, and proud of all these teams. So before I turn it over to, I believe third place will go first. I just wanted to thank all of our invited speakers and guests, our judges who were involved in evaluating the innovative ideas, engineering and clinical faculty involved in the innovation sessions, all of our coordinators and clinical faculty. And unless there are any additions, I'll turn it over back to Dr. Green and our first team presenters.
So I think we're going third to first. And so our first presentation will be from Tarek Dwamne, Rachel Stating, and Sandra Z. Please share, and we look forward to your presentation.
Hi, so I'm Rachel, and my partners are Tarek and Sandra, and we wanted to present to y'all about addressing a need with patient comfort during radiation treatment. So first we went through a clinical need selection process. This is the matrix we created when doing this process. You can see kind of the things that we were looking at. Some things were like the potential benefit, the market size, market saturation. We also wanted to make sure that there was a personal interest in the need, as well as their feasibility, and that we had access to resources. So we just wanted to make sure that we could actually see this project through, given our state right now as M1 students. So after doing this scoring on a bunch of needs that we had collected through last semester, we came across 4 needs that rated the highest using this matrix. And one of them was addressing a need with a left ventricular assist device. Another was looking into non-professional caregivers and addressing needs in that area. We also wanted to look at thoracentesis. And then finally, we looked at this radiation treatment for head and neck cancer patients. So after kind of going through this, another selection process, we came to our final need, which, if we can have the next slide, it is a way to improve patient experience during radiation treatment for head and neck cancer patients in order to increase comfort while maintaining accuracy. So this stems from seeing in the clinic that patients receiving head and neck cancer radiation treatment were pretty uncomfortable. The mask that they use can be really claustrophobic, and because of the radiation treatment, their mouths are usually very dry, their throats are dry, and so it often can kind of give them a suffocating feeling when they're using this device and when they're laid back in a prone position. So we wanted to see what we could do to improve their comfort while maintaining the accuracy.
And then from there, once we had that need, we started just ideation, thinking what can we do to improve it, and we thought about 4 different concepts. So the first one is to increase the material's comfort while receiving treatment, whether that's through better cushions, better mask, or something just from that scenario. We also looked at anxiety treatment, because imagine if yourself, you are restricted in a closed space, it can be really anxiety inducing. So we're thinking of somehow to improve that, and we thought about VR, we thought about headphones and similar stuff in games and pubs. We also looked at improving positioning stability, which we basically want to improve the patient's stability in the machine, but with that sacrificing that comfort. And lastly, we actually looked at just changing the radiation structure fully. So maybe somehow being able to track the cells that have cancer and basically allow the patient to move fully within a certain range of motion, and then the machine, the beam, will actually follow these cells. And then finally, we settled on 2 concepts. The first one is comfortable masks and pillows, and basically because the current masks and pillows are just made of plastic, and they're basically molded to your face. So they are very good when it comes to restricting your movement, but they are also very, very uncomfortable. So what we're thinking about is maybe we could change the mask material to provide the same position maintaining, but increase comfort. And we also thought about improving the pillow comfort while maintaining the restriction of the neck, because currently the pillow is not actually a pillow. It's like slightly spongy, but not that much. So we want to try to improve that a little bit. And then our second idea is positioning. And basically, currently the patient, as we can see on the right, they are sitting down, which A, makes it very hard to swallow any saliva, and B, it's just very claustrophobic. So we're thinking, what if we can use some type of recliner chair like the one we see in the picture, and that will be basically easier saliva drainage and also improve comfort. The other idea is also just basically to have the patient sitting up, and those are 2 ideas that we thought of. And now now Sandra will talk about all the assessments for those 2 ideas.
Hi, sorry, I was having issues unmuting. So first I'm going to go over our regulatory assessment. So right here is our concept ranking for the 4 concepts that we just described. Our first concept is the patient sits upright forward. Second is the recliner style chair. Third is our softer material, more comfortable mask. And fourth is our radiation friendly cushions. Going over the specifics of all of these, our first concept we decided was the patient sits upright forward chair. We found a CFR classification that fit this chair. And we also decided that for many of these concepts, we figured that they were class 2, mainly just because of if these concepts were to fail in some way, it would definitely harm the patient. So because of that, we figured that it was a good justification for labeling them all as a class 2 device. And then they all kind of took similar regulatory pathways. They would take 510Ks and then around $50,000 to move it through the pathway and 180 days. And our second concept is similar chair. The third one is a softer, more comfortable mask and kind of fits a similar profile to the ones I just discussed. This is also going to be a class 2 device for the reasons I stated previously. Again, a 510 regulatory pathway. This one may take a little less money to go through the regulatory pathway and also an additional 180 days. Next, I'm going to be going over our IP assessment. So again, ranking the concepts that we have. First is going to be the mask. Second is going to be the radiation friendly cushions. Third, the recliner style chair. And then fourth, the upright forward chair. So we paired together the first 2 concepts because they were quite similar just for this purpose of the IP assessment. Here is the classification, treatment planning systems taking into account the movement of the target or 4D-based image planning. And we found that there was limited IP on this exact concept. So we thought that the landscape was good for us to kind of enter. And we found patents for products that were kind of tangential, but we figured that we could probably circumvent those different IP landscapes. Our next concept after that is the recliner style chair. And a kind of similar idea, we found some existing IP, but we could definitely circumvent those IP barriers with novel positioning angles. These tend to focus on the angles or some specific aspects of the design. So we could definitely sort of navigate those. And then our last concept here, again, it's very similar. We did find some existing IP, but the landscape is not completely restricted. For this one, we also found many similar tangential patents, but there was none that used moldable materials, which is something that we could use to enter this market. And then next I'm going to be speaking about business models. So for a lot of our concepts, we opted to use a capital equipment business model combined with something else. So it would create a hybrid model. Our first concept is the apparatus in which the patient sits upright forward. We figured that this would be the most marketable concept just from this aspect because we could combine the capital equipment business model with a fee per use model. That way we can kind of generate continuous revenue. The next concept that we looked at for this one was a patient sits in a recliner style chair. And for that one, additionally, it would also be capital equipment. So a very expensive piece of equipment, but we would also add a reusable model. So we would replace some of the aspects of the chair for sanitary reasons to make it so that we can generate revenue continuously. And then for the third concept, we would, for the softer material, more comfortable mask, we would use a reusable model because it just is a simpler device that is in real life also meant to be reused. And we also can combine it with a service aspect business model to where we can continuously update training, update the heat molding device, etc. And lastly, I'm going to be covering the reimbursement assessment. So firstly, we ranked the softer material, more comfortable mask first. We found that it could adequately be covered by existing codes, so therefore we could definitely use it to generate revenue. Our third concept, for all of these concepts, we could use existing codes. Some other concepts that we defeated in this process that were lower ranking, we had to generate new code, which just creates extra barriers. So the second concept is our recliner style chair that could be clipped in, again, covered by codes, could generate revenue. And then our third one, which is the upright forward chair, we did find that it could be covered by existing codes, and it would also, the codes could cover the cost of our fee per use model. And next, Tarek is going to talk about the concept exploration.
So first, our first concept, as we mentioned, is adding some type of cushioning to the mask. So if you look at the picture here, this is actually a mask that is used currently in head and neck radiation. As we can see, it's plastic. It's actually molded to the face, but it's extremely uncomfortable. So the plan is to actually use that with some cushioning on the face, on the pressure points, to kind of make it easier for the mask to restrict movement without without the discomfort that is associated with that. So the plan, as you can see, is first we would actually evaluate the patient, and that is someone who has already went on radiation, and we want to see this mask and where it most applied pressure. Is it here? Is it the cheek? Is it the back of the head? And then from there, we will actually place cushions on these places, and that will just make it easier make it easier to restrict the movement. And then after that, we'll make a new mask and mold it to the face with the cushions there. And that way the cushions are maintained the same place and we still have the same restriction of the movements. And then finally, we can also use pressure sensor film to basically confirm those pressure points, because to see those pressure points, we either have to see how red the area is, or we actually can use that pressure sensor film to confirm that these pressure points are good to go. So as you can see in the picture, this is a mask, and we actually added that strip of padding in addition to that very specific gel padding. And in the future, we definitely want to improve on that material and make it the most comfortable possible while still maintaining the same restriction of movement. And now Rachel will talk about the second concept.
So for the second concept, this was the one where we are placing the patient upright and leaning forward. As you can see, there's kind of this apparatus that will catch the saliva that will fall out. So this way, instead of the saliva draining back into the patient's throat when they're in a prone position and causing that choking feeling, we'll put them upright and leaning forward, and that saliva can drain outwards and kind of use that force of gravity to help that. The patient would still have a pillow apparatus in the back that would mold to the body, so it is comfortable for the patient, but also holds them in the exact positioning, because again, the importance for radiation treatment is maintaining accuracy. So that would help ensure accuracy and reproducibility every time that the patient presents for radiation treatment. Their head and neck would still be in a device as well, in order for that same reasoning, just to ensure that they stay in place. But it's all about that new positioning. We also found that in older patients, it's actually more comfortable too for them to lean upright and forward rather than back. And often these cancer patients are of advanced age, so this works for them as well. So just in conclusion, we looked at these different concepts. We decided that we would probably pursue the softer material, the more comfortable mask, as it seems to have a lot of feasibility, a good IP landscape, good business model. And so that would be our number one prototype that we pursue. But then also the apparatus where the patient leans upright and forward, it would be our second one. And then the recliner style would be the third. In the future, we would like to continue validating the need. We did meet with a radiation oncologist from Houston Methodist, Dr. Farrak. He let us come shadow him and see these patients and talk with these ideas with him. And he did validate the need, but maybe we would do more of like a survey of a bunch of radiation oncologists across many clinics and in different cities, just to see their opinion and validate that need. And then we would also go through and start prototyping the second device as well, the apparatus I talked about where we sit upright and forward. And then we would also improve our prototype for the first material or for the first mask. And so that would be looking at different cushioning materials to make sure that they're comfortable for the patient, they address the comfortability, but then they also maintain the accuracy for the treatment. So looking at those types of things, kind of working with different engineers as well as physicians for that process. And then, going through that prototyping phase and starting to implement it into treatment to see if it works. So that would be our plan. If you have any questions, please let us know. We're happy to answer.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tarek, Rachel, and Sandra. Sandra actually is coming from a clinical experience, preceptorship, and so thank you for coming back, Sandra. Are there any questions for this group from our attendees? Let me see here. Yes. So I have a quick question. I think I've asked this before. It's obvious that this will address patient comfort, their experience, and satisfaction. So you have some validation that this is a real issue. The assumption is that if it's not going to compromise positioning, that the impact on accuracy of the radiation, the beam, or the outcome, it should be equivalent, right? It won't be
Yes.
more. Okay. Okay.
Of course.
Yeah.
We plan to operate within the margin of error that are currently allowed for the current system to use.
Yes, like you said, it would be matching that, not compromising on any of the accuracy. The only possibility of improvement in my mind, and this has no really basis, but just a thought, is that if the patient is more comfortable, it is easier for them to stay in that position for a longer time, possibly as an option for improving, but we'd have to do experiments to see if that actually is the case. But making sure that there is no compromise on the patient's radiation treatment is the #1 priority.
Yeah, I agree. I think there probably is a percentage that don't tolerate it, pull back, withdraw because of that. But again, great proposal, guys. Any other questions before we move on to group 2 from our audience, either in the chat or verbally? Okay. Our next group, second place, is Brianna Cathay, Nina Chowdhury, Madeline Franke, and Johnny McMurray. And guys, you can share and proceed.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for being here today. That was a great previous presentation. So I'm here with myself, Maddie, Neha, and Brianna, and we are going to be talking about addressing the problem of NAFLD screening and prevention. Yeah, so when we started at the beginning of the semester, we all came together with our various list of needs that we came across through our clinical reasoning sessions. And they had a broad range of concepts such as head and neck cancer screening, lymphedema, improving medication adherence, and then NAFLD tissue engineering. Ultimately, we brought all of these needs through our screening process, in which we came up with factors that were important to us. And I won't go all through all of them individually, but they range from how life-saving it would be, to our enthusiasm, to the market size, to the competitive landscape. And as we went through that, we found that the needs surrounding non-alcoholic fatty liver disease kind of brought itself to the forefront.
So our final modified need statement is a way to detect non-alcoholic fatty liver disease or prevent disease progression in at-risk individuals in order to prevent the incidence of non-alcoholic steatohepatitis, otherwise abbreviated as NASH. So the figure on the right just gives you an idea of what the disease progression looks like. So you start out with a healthy liver, and over time, fat will accumulate and deposit on the liver. Up to the point of NAFLD, that damage is reversible through diet and exercise intervention. But after that, once you progress to NASH, that damage is irreversible, and that would, in the end, necessitate a liver transplant. So that's what we're trying to avoid in this case.
And so just looking more specifically at NAFLD, there's definitely a big need to identify either better screening methods or better interventions for people who are diagnosed with NAFLD. It's prevalent in about 25% of the population in the US and globally. And that number just pretty much continues to grow. And it's not really sure of what the exact etiology of the NAFLD progression, but there are different risk factors, including like diet, exercise, lifestyle factors like that. But it's definitely a prevalent issue that we would like to address.
So we split up the need statement into 6 categories of solutions. These are all outlined in green. Some of those are invasive interventions, such as like physically scrubbing the fat off the liver, other pharmacologic, in addition to tissue modification, like 3D printing a new liver, and also behavioral modification and early detection and prevention using screening methods like biomarkers and other factors.
So one of our first initial concepts was a non-invasive screening method to detect NAFLD. So the idea here would be a wearable device that was based with some sort of sensor for like light, heat, or ultrasound to identify the degree of the diseased liver and how fatty it is, and kind of identify the stage at which it is in order to then kind of dictate whatever next steps need to be taken. Other sort of concepts focus more on disease monitoring. So either after you are diagnosed with NAFLD, seeing how it progresses, or even seeing how it regresses with different treatment modalities. And so one of our concepts here was a wearable device to monitor that disease progression kind of at any point in time. Another one was a rapid screening test to identify different biomarkers and be able to tell the degree of NAFLD through that. So using biomarkers that correlate with NAFLD or specifically, and creating some sort of metric that allows us or even the patient to figure out what kind of disease state they're in.
Some other concepts that we had initially that we were playing around with is one, a device to physically scrub the fat off the liver itself. So as part of this concept, we thought through various methods such as like a scalpel, laser, ultrasound, the idea being that it was a physical process to remove the fat. As opposed to the other concept, which would be more of a PAT with fat metabolizing drugs placed on the skin in order to more chemically break down fat, in order to break down fat in the liver.
And our last three concepts kind of fell under the umbrella of functional replacement. And all of these concepts were eventually scrapped just because we realized our true clinical need is more of screening and prevention versus functional replacement. But these concepts, our first one was a liver assistive device to help perform part of the liver's function. And this can just be thought of an ancillary device, kind of like how an LVAD or a left ventricular assist device is for the heart, just to kind of assist with functions there. And then 3D printing a new functional liver. And this was a combination of cells, growth factors, biomaterials using some sort of bioprinting process. And then the last one was actually using tissue engineering. So using the patient's own healthy tissue and then regrowing and then implanting back into the patient.
So then next we kind of looked at different ways to rate our multiple concepts and kind of focusing more on screening methods and preventative measures. Our top two concepts with our regulatory assessment were the screening test with the biomarkers and then some sort of sensor for early detection of NAFLD. And this was kind of based off of considering time and cost of approval, the regulatory pathway itself, since these two would be 510K pathways, and then the different ways we could classify the devices. So these would definitely be a little bit more approachable in terms of regulatory assessments than the more functional replacement concepts that we had initially.
And in terms of the intellectual property assessment, so for this, we were looking mostly on like the IP in terms of like patents and different things that were currently out there relating to our different concepts, just to get an idea of what the competition would be in regards to them. And so that what came out on top in terms of this assessment was the 3D printed liver or the tissue regeneration. The reason why these came out in top in terms of IP assessment is that these topics are kind of uncharted territory still. So there really aren't many patents that are currently active, meaning the IP landscape is a bit more open. The disadvantages obviously are what we have said previously, is that there's a lot of competitors with high level of expertise and funding that are working on this. It's a highly researched area. And it would require a lot of funding on our part in order to actually create a patentable solution.
All right, so the next thing we did was assign a business model to each of our top 8 concepts. And for the top 2, we ended up assigning, we ranked them based on the ease of implementation and the feasibility of that business model for that idea. So the top one ended up being a capital equipment model for the device to scrub fat off the liver, because we felt like it would be easy to earn revenue by just selling one device per hospital or clinic and then being able to charge for service without having to maintain a constant supply of the device itself. And then after that, a subscription model for a wearable device to monitor progression would also be good, because we could just be using the same device and continue collecting subscription funds based on that use, and it would probably have minimal maintenance. And halfway through our design process this semester, we realized that a lot of the concepts were not really feasible or specific enough. And we wanted to be able to prototype something by the end of the year. So our original outcome desire was to reduce the rate of liver transplantation. And we shifted that more to detection and screening, just to make sure that patients do not progress to that stage. So we ended up scrapping most of our concepts and then expanding the concepts related to screening and early testing, and then expanding that to a new list of 8 options. And the top 2 we ended up with were a thermal imaging device and also a blood biomarker detection algorithm.
Kind of rounding out our bio design process, one of the next steps was determining reimbursement and how that would look in terms of how we would be compensated from insurance. And we did this by looking up a bunch of the available codes to see if there were any that needed to be created or ones that we could use for our concepts. So the top 2 for that was liver biopsy and transient elastography. And these 2 just had codes already available for us to use. But I'd like to draw your attention to the no existing reimbursement concepts, because these were actually some of our top concepts. So the predictive algorithm for NAFLD and thermal imaging. And these really didn't have a lot of codes to use for our own concepts, just because they're pretty new in terms of in the field for NAFLD. And so that's just something we had to consider, is being able to somehow create new codes to be able to implement these concepts. And so for our concept exploration, this is when we picked our top 2 concepts we were going to prototype. And these ended up being the thermal imaging device that pairs with a programming algorithm in MATLAB to detect NAFLD, and then the blood biomarker design using an algorithm in Python. And so over to the left, you can see our thermal imaging kind of questions that we wanted to answer with our prototype. And this involved, can the human liver borders even be assessed by a thermal sensor, and seeing if MATLAB is the best software platform to be able to do this and implement our algorithm. And then over to the right with our blood biomarker detection, these are the top questions we wanted to answer with this prototype. And this was going to be, are there correlative biological parameters that we can use for this algorithm, and then which programming software and platform would be the best to implement this prototype.
Right, so this is our first concept, which is the thermal imaging of the liver. So the idea is that a clinician would be able to use a thermal camera, take an image of the front of a patient, and then upload it to the software. And once you select the liver borders that are estimated, you would calculate the variance of the image, and that has been shown to correlate to the amount of fat deposited on the liver itself. So it would give you a predictive measure as to if this person is at risk for further development of fat on the liver. So possible improvements for this is to better be able to detect the borders of the liver itself, potentially by taking multiple images from different angles to cover more surface area, and then also maybe taking a different type of image that's also low cost that would better able to detect the borders of the liver itself. And other parameters have also been shown to correlate with fat deposition, such as entropy and contrast. So if we were able to incorporate more of those parameters, we'd be able to probably strengthen the predictability of the algorithm. And then for testing, which we didn't get a chance to do this semester, the first thing we would probably do is use other imaging modalities like ultrasound and CT, and work with clinicians who do this for a living and correlate the diagnosis from those patients and try to compare it to the results from this software to see if there is a strong enough predictive value.
So then for our second concept, the blood biomarker one, we started by looking at different biomarkers that are kind of used right now to identify NAFLD and NASH. And so these pretty much come from a standard hepatic function panel that involves different biomarkers. And right now it's a little bit more like, are some of these high or some of them low? And so it's hard to necessarily have a more rigorous assessment of the state of the liver with current methods. And so with this, we kind of thought we could take it two different directions. One would be really going into research and figuring out the degree of correlation of each of these biomarkers to NAFLD, and then kind of using that to weight each metric accordingly to come up with a single score that was more specific for NAFLD. Another one was more comprehensive, where we kind of look at all of the enzymes or the biomarkers together and use it and see if it's rather higher or lower compared to control or healthy normal patients, and then creating a score that way. And so ideally we kind of have to do both. But the idea here is that we make an algorithm that takes into account multiple different biomarkers to come up with a rigorous score. And this also leaves room for the incorporation of newer biomarkers that are being researched right now, including more inflammatory biomarkers that can indicate different states of the liver, and specifically indicate the degree of progression to a more fibrotic liver versus a fatty liver. And so it kind of has a lot of room to grow there as well.
Yeah, and just building off of that, as part of our prototype, we took this idea and tried to make our own very simple machine learning program using Python. So you can see in the flowchart how we organize this, that we found training data that was publicly available based on hepatic liver panel, kind of run it through our program to get predictions using some test data to see if we could kind of even make the program to answer kind of those initial questions of like, can we make something? What do we do going forward? So definitely this initial prototype is very simple. So possible improvements are to look into different algorithms and how to effectively implement them and what is the best for our use cases. Along with that, a big part of it would be finding accurate data, and as Neha explained, using more of the data points that are specific and tailored towards non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, as opposed to just the standard panel. And yet to seek out those data sets that are more pertinent. Along with that, kind of further testing would be to actually move into actual patients and try to get real data to make a more effective model moving forward.
Yeah, and one of the last things we did is we took these top concepts and just put them in a big risk scoring matrix dependent on our IP analysis, regulatory analysis, reimbursement, business model. So all the things we've been doing this semester, and assigning weight to them and scoring them and seeing if any of our ideas had any killer risks that made us reconsider that concept. And then we made a final PU matrix out of everything with our nice to haves and must haves for what we wanted to pursue as our one concept. And those are kind of listed here below. And we ended up deciding on our thermal sensor, so what we just talked about, and that was our final and leading concept for the entire semester. And then in conclusion, this is our modified need statement that we ended up getting to after all of the modifications we made to it, and that's a way to detect NAFLD or prevent disease progression in at-risk individuals in order to prevent incidence of NASH. And then, like I said, the thermal imaging device was our leading concept out of all the assignments and all the research that we've done. And then moving forward, we would like to acquire a thermal camera to actually be able to test it out with our algorithm that's been already made. And then, of course, just testing our device and answering those questions and being able to develop our prototypes further. And that is the end of our presentation. If there are any questions, we would love to answer them.
Excellent, excellent. Our second place winners. Are there any questions for our students, please, either in the chat or via audio?
Applaud your creativity and selection of the problem. It is a real world problem that is growing and advancing globally. Your approach to this is quite creative.
I just wanted to add as well that I've heard this presentation in fall semester and then in the spring semester. And the one thing I want to share with the students and also with our audience is that to see the impact of this activity and how the students, how you all were able to refocus your need based on the analysis, based on investigation of the landscape, regulatory, feasibility. And I think, at least from a clinical standpoint, this reflects at least one of the points of this program. You know, that as physicians and engineers, you're able to look at the landscape even at this level and refocus the need and focus your innovation on that need. So kudos to you. All right, we'll go on to our first place winners. Facility Anemicos, Caleb Hausler, Mitchell Sue, and Tanner Walker, addressing non-compliance with patients who are taking more than 3 medicines or polypharmacy. Take it away.
Okay, good afternoon. My name is Mitchell Shu. I am part of group 3 along with Lily, Caleb, and Tanner. And today we're going to talk to you guys about Pillins, the medication dispenser. So first off, we started with finding our need. And so this was a pretty long iterative process where we had to come up with 24 different need statements. And then we narrowed down those 24 need statements depending on the following criteria. We tended to weigh the team passion and time resources more heavily just because we're currently M1 students and time is really valuable right now. And we ended up with the 4 following concepts as our main needs: small fiber neuropathy diagnosis, determining timing of strokes, detecting avascular necrosis, and improving medication compliance. And so we ended up going up with the 4th need statement. If you could go to the next slide, please. The full need statement ends up being there's a need for a new way to administer and deliver pharmaceuticals in patients taking more than 3 medications in order to reduce incidences of non-compliance and misuse. Next slide, please. And so from that one need stemmed 30 different concepts that ended up falling under 5 main categories as follows. We had physical devices, novel drug mechanics that were not device-based, such as apps. We had like other apps, we had compliance enhancing services, as well as AI and machine learning techniques. And the next slide, you'll see our concept map with the, could you go one more slide over, please? So you'll see our main need statement in the blue box in the middle, along with 5 main subcategories, and we had a pretty good spread of concepts over all 5 of the categories. I'm not going to go too in depth on this image just because there's too much stuff on it. If you could go to the next image, please.
So we took that concept map where they kind of had different categories, and we split them into, you know, our 8 top concepts, and kind of made sure that we had one concept from each of our 5 subcategories, as well as 3 more concepts that we kind of felt were the best beyond just having one from each category. And so here are our 8 concepts. So we had some initial prototypes for these. And so the first one is an easy access pill container for movement disorders, because pill containers are very difficult to open if you have some kind of movement disorder. The second one was a positive incentive medication compliance reward system, whether it be something small, such as, you know, candy if it's a kid or something like that, or something more major like maybe an insurance credit. Our third concept was a multi-cartridge injection pen. This is really based on, you know, the insulin injection pen. But the idea here is that instead of having to give medication and shots really in multiple places on your body, you just have one injection pen for multiple medications, and that it just switches cartridges while that injection pen is in. So that way, you know, someone doesn't have to give themselves 4 or 5 shots a day, and instead just have to give them one shot in one location. And we thought that that might help increase compliance. Our fourth one is a pill sorting and dispensing machine. You can see the prototype for this over here. We just sorted by color, but the idea would be to have multiple parameters like color, size, and other things that is very specific to the medication. So that way that there's high confidence in its ability to sort the medication properly. And Our fifth idea is a little bit converse to our second idea, which was a positive incentive compliance. We talked about possibly having some kind of negative incentive program to keep people responsible. And, we talked about how we can make that ethical and how we can make it relevant to someone and make someone really want to actually use our device. And the way we talked about it was some kind of system where the loved ones of the patient are aware of the non-compliance of their patient. So if someone wasn't taking their medication, their loved ones would get a notice on their phone that says, hey, X patient isn't taking their medications. Can you talk to them? Or just so you're aware, this patient hasn't taken their medication today. And that sort of thing, in order for them to know that if they don't take their medication, their loved ones are going to know. And our sixth one is an AI or ML, so machine learning, medication filter. And the idea here was if you could just take a picture of a pill bottle and have all that information stored, on your phone or on some kind of database, and it creates a schedule for you. So it really takes the thinking and creating the schedule away from the patient and more is streamlined. Our seventh and eighth ideas are similar in that they were inspired by insulin drug infusion pumps. And the idea is similar to the multi-cartridge injection pen, except for instead of having just one cartridge, it would have multiple cartridges on one infusion site. And for the eighth idea, it's just that instead of it being on the skin, it would be in the skin. So as we were talking and we were trying to narrow it down from our top 8 ideas, we realized that it's not necessarily mutually exclusive between the ideas. So I'm going to go back and not every single one of these means that you can't do the other one. For instance, you can have a medication compliance system that both has a positive medication compliance and a negative incentive program. And you can have a pill sorter that interacts with both the positive and the negative incentive programs, as well as the AI filter that feeds into a pill sorter. So as we were talking, we kind of realized that, the pieces were coming together, that this wasn't necessarily multiple ideas, but that if we could merge those ideas into one thing in order to increase compliance, that would be the best. And again, as we were talking, we realized that both 3, 7, and 8, which were the ones that were inspired by insulin devices, were very niche in the sense that the medication would have to be able to be taken subcutaneously, and that's not necessarily true for all medications. So this is the way our concept would work. It's a multifunctional medication apparatus, as I talked about. So the first step is that it would scan a pill bottle and label, like I was saying, and it reads the information and compares it to a database of the top 1,000 most used medications. So whenever it reads that pill bottle, it knows exactly the parameters for that medication and how much you're taking, how often you're taking it. And then it sorts that medication seeing that GIF. It sorts that medication into some kind of dispenser. And then it will dispense the medication based on what it read from the pill bottle label. And so it does the dosage, it does the timing for you. It really does the thinking part of setting up your medications. And then it will alert the patient to take their medication. So maybe that they just forgot, and then they get an alert on their phone that says, hey, have you taken your medication today? And then our last steps are really the compliance steps, where it'll alert a physician of consistent use before they even walk into any kind of clinical encounter, where they can look up that patient's compliance and say, this patient hasn't been taking their metformin, or this patient hasn't been taking their medication at all. And so it kind of gives them a heads up before they even see the patient that this is, there's a compliance issue here, as well as it's going to reward patients for consistent use. And we talked about, little incentives at first, such as candy, but that doesn't necessarily mean that's the extent of what a positive incentive could be. As we were talking to Dr. Green earlier today, she was mentioning how, car companies give you a credit for watching defensive driving. And if you're compliant for your medication, there's no reason to think that couldn't also be an incentive where they could possibly lower your drug prices or something like that. Of course, that's end game stuff. And we don't have that lined up, but that would be the idea. And then the 7th and 8th bullet are, not only would it alert the physician that they're constantly using the medication or consistently using it, but that it would also alert the physician if something's gone wrong, and it would also alert the family if something's gone wrong. So now we're going to just dive into the individual components of our concept. And is Caleb on?
Yeah, so I'll speak a little bit towards this. This is the kind of the behind the scenes of what Tanner was talking about in step one. This is kind of what makes our device so easy to use and so easy to set up. So on the right, you can see these different pictures of pill bottles. And these are the actual pill bottles that are fed into the Python script shown on the left side of the screen. So this Python script does is it uses a tesseract optical character recognition system in order to pull all of the text from the image that is taken and convert that to actual readable text that the script can actually work with. And after that, as Tanner was saying, it looks through a list of the top 1,000 medications and tries to find a match on the pill bottle anywhere. So after it finds lisinopril on the bottle, it knows that's what it's looking at is a pill bottle of lisinopril. The next step of it is it looks for different keywords that can tell the program exactly the dosage of it and the frequency. So look for keywords like 1 pill a day or 2 pill twice a day. And it takes this information and compiles it all into an array for that medication, which it then appends to a data frame that's like the master list of all the medications the patient's taking. So the end of the results of this is all the patient has to do is take a picture of their pill bottle. The program will do the rest. And it has a list of all the medications that they need to take, when they need to take them. And that way the machine can automatically dispense them in the morning, around midday, and also towards the afternoon. So it makes it very easy, very intuitive for them to set up. And it even works with, it even takes pain medications they're taking temporarily, like hydrocodone, that they're taking like every 6 to 8 hours. It'll even take that and convert it into a system that is workable with the other medications. So that way they get their pain medication at the right time as well. Some future plans we have for this program are actually incorporating some aspects of like a deep convolutional neural network, which is it's a really good machine learning algorithm that works well with image processing. It'd be very useful for this kind of task where it has to take an image and then try to pull the relevant information from it. I can go to the next slide. This is just the remainder of the code I was talking about. And as you can see on the slide, those are some of the keywords it's looking for right now in order to get some insight into its dosing and frequency. Now we can go ahead and move on to the next slide.
Okay, so this is kind of a rough flow chart of how the rest of the device would work and how it interacts with the patient. So first off, the patient, say, opens up the pill container and some kind of sensor, say a pressure sensor or a weight sensor, then sensors the patient opening the container and taking out the medication. Sensor sends a signal to the Arduino or microchip. Microchip then records the time and date at which the patient took the medication and compares it to the list of medications to determine whether or not the patient took the medication appropriately. Then it'll record this for about a week. Then after a week, if you could go to the next slide, please. After about a week, the Arduino will then send a message to the physician saying, hey, the patient was compliant for the last week, or hey, the patient was not compliant for the last week. Then the physician then has the option to send a signal back to the Arduino to either reward the patient or punish the patient. And by punish the patient, I mean the Arduino will then send a message to the patient's family saying, hey, your family member was not compliant with the medications last week. It would be good if you could check up on them. And then hopefully the family will then contact the patient and convince them to take the medication.
So this is the third piece, the pill sorting piece of our prototype. And the idea right here is that we just wanted a proof of concept in order to tell that we could actually sort medications apart from each other. So this device just uses color. It takes an RGB value, and I took 5 RGB values and made a standard deviation and just see if I can, separate the medications. But it's not to say that you couldn't also just add a size component to this, where you change the size of the hopper. So that way you're also stratifying by size. And the ultimate goal is to have so many different ways that you're sorting the medication that the likelihood of some kind of medication going into the wrong dispenser is just very low or minimal.
So I'm going to talk about some of the less fun stuff right now. The first thing I'm going to talk about is the regulatory assessment in the intellectual property. So when we looked at this concept, we dug into how we would get it to market, what would be the regulatory pathway. Our device is a 21 CFR 880 device, which is considered a general hospital and personal use device. It would be a class 1 device, so it wouldn't be under the skin. It wouldn't give any kind of health risk or anything. It's an external device, doesn't have to relate with what we do. and it would be 510K GMP exempt, which means it would only take about 1 year of approval and $10,000 maximum to bring it to market or get it approved, which is pretty good. And if you look over to your right, you'll see our IP prior art. And you can see that there's a couple of active patents that are also related to dispensing of pills. But when we really looked into it, we found that ours was pretty unique and not at all related to those. So we were like, woo, awesome. Overall, we decided that we had freedom to operate based on existing patent landscape, and that our regulatory approval would be quick and low cost, which further approved us choosing the concept that we choose to move forward with. Next slide, please. Awesome. So when we looked at the business model, we really wanted to choose something that would be able to bring in revenue over an extended period of time and kind of uphold a company. We decided that this would be a hybrid business model, which had 3 components. The first would be the reusable component, which would be the machine itself, kind of like what Tanner showed there. The second would be a high cost disposable, which would be the sorting mechanism. So one of our biggest competitors, which I'll mention later, would be the Hero machine, and they also have a high cost disposable component for their sorting mechanism. So it kind of goes hand in hand with what's already out there for a revenue generator. And then the last would be a subscription, which would be the up-to-date drug database and physician communication program, which is most likely very kind of desirable to a lot of our clients. So finally, I'm going to talk about the reimbursement. When we looked at this, we realized that there was only one reusable non-billable HCPCS2 code, and our concept would require the formation of new codes in an attempt to get Medicare coverage, but that in one sense, we could potentially fall under medication adherence counseling since we have that kind of negative positive incentive type thing, and that might be able to be good for outpatient billable coding. So like I mentioned here, I have our competition. The first one is the Hero device. It has some similar things, but as you'll see, ours also is easy to set up by that scanning mechanism that we talked about. And then ours does scan the pills with a smartphone. So because of both of these things, you don't have to spend any time trying to plug in numbers. You don't have to spend any time trying to plug in dosages. Our machine figures it out for you. And then finally, we have the negative and positive feedback mechanism, which is not something that our competitors offer and can be highly desirable by not only physicians, but people who struggle to remember to take their medications, because it kind of turns it into something that they have to achieve or a game. Next slide. So in conclusion, there is definitely a need for a new way to administer and deliver pharmaceuticals in patients taking 3 or more medications in order to reduce incidences of non-compliance and misuse of medications. And our solution was to make an integrated device that enables the patient to effectively organize their own medications in a way that is easy to use, easy to manage, easy to adjust, and easy to put our medication changes. So we will now be taking any questions if you have any. Thank you.
Thank you. Our first place winners. Do we have any questions?
I have a comment and a question. First of all, great job, guys. This is quite a problem, as every clinician knows. Erica knows this has been a problem for as long as we've been in medicine, particularly with the number of medications that some patients have to take. And it's not uncommon for patients to have more than 3 medications, as many as 6, even more. It's overwhelming sometimes, and you see the number of medications that somebody has, and you ask yourself practically, how could someone remember to take all these medicines and take them? So the need is a practical and realistic one. Lily, you did a great job in showing a chart that compares your system with the other approaches that are in the marketplace. And you showed a number of things that your proposed system does that others don't do? Is there anything that others do that your system doesn't do? Like you have check marks on everything. Is there something that another system does that you would have an X? Lily or anybody?
Sorry, I have bad, my Wi-Fi is cutting in and out. I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question, please?
I get that all the time too. So, you know, this chart is great. It shows a number of features that your device has that the Hero or other systems don't have. Are there any features that other systems have that your device, as contemplated right now, does not have?
So first and foremost, we kind of lose out in the fact that the Hero is the first device to market and people can already buy it. So it has familiarity. That's definitely something that it has. I'm not sure about exact components. I can look that up and get back to you, or if any of my teammates know, they can pitch in with an answer right now. That would be awesome. But yeah, it's definitely something that we tried to model. We took the Hero and we were like, let's make it better. So let's do everything that it does and then make it better so that we're not falling in any points. So I don't think that it does, except the fact that it has that recognition already and is already on the market.
Yeah, so you don't necessarily have to get back to me, but that's the point I was making, is the one that you just responded to, is to make sure that there's something that's really useful that another system has that your system does not have as of yet, and to incorporate that so that your system really is better. But I like the scanning with the smartphone idea and the automated analysis from your software on the smartphone. That's forward thinking and really neat. Erica?
Yes, I would just add, as we conclude this session, I was giving anyone else an opportunity to ask a question.
I do have one more comment to make about the NAFLD group, our second place winner, the non-alcoholic fatty liver disease problem. So you no doubt know that until about roughly a decade or so ago, maybe even more recent than that, the way that this diagnosis was made was by biopsy. But over the last decade, there is a non-invasive approach, which is MR elastography. And that has been FDA approved in the last, 5 years or so, maybe a little bit longer, such that all major manufacturers of equipment now have software to do that. It's made a real difference in the diagnosis of this disease because it is non-invasive, and that is a transformative type of development. Herzog talked about working towards transformation, and anytime you can go from an invasive technique to a non-invasive technique, I think that qualifies. But your system, this is for the second place winners, your system could potentially be an improvement. It is a non-invasive approach. A non-invasive approach already exists, but it doesn't mean it can't be better. And I really like the simplicity of your approach because it could potentially improve access to this diagnostic that doesn't require higher-end equipment. So those are my final comments, Erica. I turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Dr. Pettigrew. I just wanted to congratulate all of our students, those and especially our awarded top winners. Excellent proposals. You really showcased EnMed. You are our gems. And so thank you so much. And thank you for Dr. Pettigrew and Dr. Sears and just Dr. Diamond Dixon, who is our coordinator here. who put this all together. So kudos to her and her staff. We're going to transition to the latter part of our program for the next 30 minutes, and I'd like to introduce to you Dr. Dirk Sossman. Dr. Sossman serves as the Executive Vice President and Chief Academic Officer here at Houston Methodist. He also is the President of Houston Methodist Academic Institute, and he holds the Ernest Cockrell Jr. Presidential Distinguished Chair. Dr. Sossman is going to share some exciting news regarding the EnMed capstone program. Dr. Sossman?
Thank you, Dr. Green, and thank you as well to the faculty and mentors and the students, especially the students, for your creative ideas and incisive presentations. I'm very impressed by the sophistication with which you approach this task. So congratulations on your achievements to date, and best wishes for continuation in the future. As Dr. Green mentioned, I'm proud to hold the Cockrell Presidential Distinguished Chair, which is named for Houston Methodist Board of Directors life member Ernie Cockrell's father. With Ernie's vision from the beginning, Houston Methodist's focus has been on translational research. We endeavor to move the discoveries and treatments we develop in research into effective and perhaps groundbreaking therapies that benefit our patients more quickly and at a lower cost than traditional academic programs may do. We strive every day to develop and translate the best, most innovative science and technology into new realities for our patients. And we've seen that today in your ideas. Very, very exciting. And the capstone projects that EnMed students will be completed under the direction of world-class faculty like Dr. Alessandro Grattoni, who you'll meet in a moment, will transform medicine thanks to some truly remarkable philanthropic investments from our benefactors, including Sue Smith, Craig Brown, and Jean and Frank Raymond. It's been great to work alongside Sue in her role as a member of the Houston Methodist Academic Institute Board of Directors. And I can attest to how deeply engaged she and Craig are with the EnMed program. And we're grateful to their friends and business colleagues, Jean and Frank Raymond, who share Sue and Craig's enthusiasm for the EnMed program and capstone projects. Their sincere commitment to education shows in their passion and commitment to the EnMed students. Thanks to their enormous generosity, I'm delighted to be able to announce that they have completely funded the Capstone Innovator Award component of the EnMed Innovation Portfolio Program. So thank you so much. And in recognition and appreciation of their leadership, their involvement, and this visionary investment that they've made, they've honored us by allowing us to name the Craig Brown and Suzanne Smith and Frank and Jean Raymond Engineering Medicine Capstone Innovator Awards program at Houston Methodist. In addition to their very significant gift to support these elite capstone projects, they will be going above and beyond to create additional awards to recognize outstanding students and faculty. Their gifts have already generously created 2 endowed chairs, the Craig C. Brown and Suzanne H. Smith Centennial Chair in Medical Education, which is held by Chief Education Officer of the Academic Institute and Chair of the Department of Urology, Dr. Tim Boone, and the chair, chair of Department of Nanomedicine, Dr. Alessandro Grattoni, who proudly holds the Frank J. and Jean Raymond Centennial Chair. So a lot of things to celebrate here from the students, the faculty, and our benefactors and leaders. And I'd like, in that spirit, to introduce Sue and Craig and with great pleasure ask them to say a few words about what inspired them to make this transformational commitment to EnMed's success. Sue and Craig, please.
Well, thank you, Dr. Salzman. On behalf of my husband, Craig Brown, and also Frank and Jean Raymond, we are so excited to be a part of the Capstone projects. We were drawn to this part of the EnMed program because of its heavy focus on innovation, and also because of the potential for commercialization of some of these projects that we believe will elevate the EnMed program, generate faculty and philanthropic support, and inspire other medical schools to model themselves after EnMed. Craig and I, along with the Raymonds, are pleased to announce that beginning next year, the awards ceremony will include a $5,000 award for each team member or individual selected as the outstanding capstone project, and also a $5,000 award for the outstanding faculty mentor. We also like to express our gratitude to Dr. Grattoni for his involvement and leadership in the capstone projects. Dr. Grattoni has been intimately involved in all aspects of the projects, and his leadership has set a foundation of excellence for projects this year and going forward. With that, it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Grattoni, who holds the Frank and Jean Raymond Centennial Chair and the chair of the Department of Nanomedicine at Houston Methodist. Dr. Grattoni?
Thank you, Sue. This was very kind of you. And as Dr. Salzman mentioned, it is my great honor to hold the Frank Jean Raymond Centennial Chair, as well as the chair of the Department of Nanomedicine at Houston Methodist. Though Frank and Jean were not able to join us today, we are incredibly grateful to them and to Sue and Craig for their enormous generosity and continued support of the EnMed program. I have the pleasure of working closely alongside these EnMed scholars, and I'm delighted to be able to announce today our first winners today. This is, of course, the inaugural year of the Brown Smith and Raymond EnMed Capstone Innovator Award. And this year, the review committee unanimously agreed to award 5 different projects. I will now announce them in no particular order. So the first award goes to Madeline Frank for her project titled Antisense Oligonucleotide-Based Therapies for the Treatment of Osteoarthritis. Madeline will be conducting the project in the laboratory of Dr. Francesca Taraballi here at Houston Methodist. Congratulations, Madeline. The second award will go to Kaylin O'Connell for her project entitled Metalloprotease Sensitive Nanoparticle in Early Ovarian Cancer Detection. And her project will be performed in the laboratory of Dr. Biana Godin in the Department of Nanomedicine at Houston Methodist. Congratulations to you as well, Kaylin. Now, the third award goes to Johnny McMurray for his project entitled Cellular Delivery of mRNA using a novel electroporation platform. And Johnny will be mentored on this project by 2 distinguished faculty, of course, which are Dr. John Cook and Dr. Rod Pettigrew. So this is a fantastic mentoring team, and congratulations to you, Johnny. The fourth award goes to Ashmi Patel for her project entitled Creation of RNA-Enhanced Scaffold for Wound Healing. Her project will be mentored by Dr. John Cook. Finally, the fifth award goes to Zachary Richards for the project entitled Slit Lamp Biomicroscope for Every Patient, an Inclusive Redesign. Zach will be actually working closely with Dr. Andrew Lee. So congratulations, Zach, and once again, congratulations to all of you awardees of the inaugural year of the Brown, Smith, and Raymond EnMed Capstone Innovator Award. With that, I will hand it back over to Dr. Erica Green for closing the program.
Thank you, Dr. Gattoni. Well, with that, this concludes our first inaugural EnMed Innovation Symposium. I am so proud to be a part of EnMed. I again want to recognize our leaders, Dr. Rod Pettigrew, Dr. Timothy Boone, our TAMU leaders and faculty who have been a part of this, as well as our coordinators and our students as well. I hope that we can build upon this every year. We would love to have your feedback in terms of what resonated with you, what was important to you, and in ways that we can build upon it. So with that, take care and God bless.